the Talent Waste Show. As you know, my name's Lee McQueen, and we are on a mission to find out if talent waste exists through research, statistics, brilliant guests each week on the Talent Waste Show. We think talent waste affects organisations across all industries. It occurs when an employee leaves an organisation prematurely due to that business not being able to retain them. Some ridiculous statistics and research that we found since starting the Talent Waste Show: between 30 and 45% of employees leave organisations within the first year, and 80% of that employee turnover is generally down to bad hiring decisions. And they are statistics from the Harvard Business Review and also the Office of National Statistics as well. What's really, really amazing, and we've had some fantastic guests to showcase this to us as well, is that it can cost in excess of £12,000 to £30,000 a year for every bad hire that we bring into organisations. And it is due to lots of different things: bad cultural fit, unconscious bias, poor hiring decisions, etc., etc. Last time out, we had the wonderful Annabelle Jones, who gave us some wonderful insights on her experience and transformation of a global workforce spanning over 65,000 people with ADP. It was an absolutely brilliant episode, and you can follow Annabelle via LinkedIn. You can catch up on the show via Crowdcast, which we're obviously live now, and on LinkedIn, Spotify, and yes, we're also on YouTube as well. And you can follow us on @Phoenix51 or follow our LinkedIn page on Phoenix 51. But enough of all that. Let's get to today and why we're actually here. So today, my guest is the expert of all things people. Joe's experience is impressive, working with the likes of the BBC, Channel 4 and Talk Talk, all the way through to consulting with Korn Ferry, which, if you don't know, we probably all hold as the gold standard of assessment. And now Joe's business, Let's Talk Talent, has helped hundreds of organisations develop in culture and change management, organisational design, and of course, talent management. I'm delighted to spend the next 30 minutes or so with Joe Taylor. Joe, welcome to the Talent Waste Show. How are you?
Thank you, Lee. I'm so excited. This is really, really cool. I've kind of put my star outfit on today because I think we're going to really sort of have a moment between the two of us. Even though you're a Tottenham supporter and I'm an Arsenal supporter, we can still live in the moment. But
we can indeed. We just talked about that in Greenwood, weren't we?
I know. But I think what you said is super interesting because fundamentally, I believe that everyone has potential and that everyone is talented. And that what organisations don't do is ask the question, potential for what? And that's what our business ultimately does. Our whole reason for getting up every day is to try and unlock the potential in people, whether that's in individuals, whether that's upskilling managers, teams and organisations, to really start to answer that exam question ultimately. Because if you do, the things that you were talking about, attrition, ED&I, leadership culture, are kind of eradicated, and they've been around for so many years. We're still talking about the same things, and therefore I want to feel that with my business, which I couldn't do when I worked at the BBC or even at Channel 4, was actually start to answer that exam question and leave some sort of legacy, because that's surely what we kind of, it feels like you do and that I do, to kind of get out of bed every day and feel like you've got some purpose beyond the fact that you kind of want to make sure that sort of higher why is answered.
Yeah, totally agree. And obviously it's really interesting actually. So can you just talk to us a little bit about, for those of you who don't know who you are, or for those of you who kind of haven't met you before, what's Joe Taylor all about? You've been with your business, you've set your business, 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago?
Yeah.
So tell us about Let's Talk Talent.
So Let's Talk Talent was set up when I left Talk Talk in 2015 because I had an itch that I wanted to scratch. I really believed that I couldn't do that within organizations, because while I had I was a global director of talent. I looked after the employee experience for Talk Talk, both, onshore and offshore.
Yeah.
I'd set up brands at Channel 4 to democratize the media industry for, unrecognized groups of individuals. I'd been a program maker at the BBC, working with Annie Robinson. As you know from your past, Lee. It's the whole golden thread that's kind of taken my career is that I'm ultimately a really nosy Parker. I just like to. I'm really just interested in people.
Yeah, and interested.
Yeah. And I just want to know what makes someone tick. And I feel that within organizations, when you have a title like talent director or engagement director or whatever, chief people officer, you're kind of in a way constrained. Whereas by setting up my business, it means I can work with the likes of, big global organizations, the AA, Dentsu, Securitas, but then work with really small businesses where you feel like you're part of the HR culture and that you're like the shoulder that those people can rely on, and then you're helping them. So we do, my ethos ultimately is two things. Organizations need to get great people and keep great people. That's it. That's super simple.
Simple. I love simple. I love that being simple. So what sort of challenges, or just on that, because we are probably coming into a time now that from a talent, or the war on talent, as a lot of people are calling it, is probably unprecedented. I can't tell you how my phone is ringing off the hook sometimes with, have you got, can you just, have you, and it's fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but the war is not just within sector. It's actually multi-sector. It's cross-sector. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
What sort of challenges are you or your clients facing right now? And do you think that's got a direct impact of the pandemic, for example, Joe?
Yeah, so I think the pandemic has had a massive effect. So I think every business that we worked with sort of went into a state of hibernation in relation to talent development, right? So budgets were cut. Everybody started to talk about furlough. Everyone started to talk about target operating model. And then as we sort of came out of our cocoon and in a way out of hibernation, the consultancy world and the work that we do has kind of reinvigorated and increased. And that's because of a number of things. I think one, people have realized finally that people are their biggest asset, even though we've been talking about it for years. Right. But they're seeing this great resignation. So if you look at April this year in America, 4 million people resigned in 1 month.
So that's my phone.
There you go.
4 million people. That's incredible. Yeah, I told you it keeps ringing. I did say that.
Yeah, exactly. 4 million people resigned, and that people are making a choice. So they are used to having flexibility, which before you would go to your manager and you'd say, "Can I work from home?" And they go, "Well, get me a business case." Right now, there are even jobs on the front, less so I'd say in probably retail and in hospitality, but you're even seeing in customer service. So places like Utility Warehouse, TalkTalk, who are taking their customer service and molding that from being in a call center environment to home. So I think it's changed the talent dynamic. So chunks of society that perhaps didn't feel that they had a place, working mothers, people with caring responsibilities are able to kind of get back into the workforce.
Totally agree. It's interesting. Just on that, just quickly to interact with you, we were talking to a customer just yesterday, and they said the exact same thing. Is that actually, sometimes it's opened up the talent pool essentially, because now working virtually, instead, if you've got an office in, I don't know, in London, if you've got an office in Birmingham, you've got an office in Manchester, you can actually reside in Scotland. It doesn't really matter. Because actually the virtuality, if you like, is there, and actually that kind of flexible working with the mothers coming back into the fold as well is you've got some amazing skill sets that had been wasted, right? To be fair, and now it's opened that up.
Absolutely. So Deloitte did did a program a couple of years ago that was really innovative, which was they did a returners program. I think they piloted it in the States, where they said that anybody that sort of, my age, mid-40s, who perhaps maybe had a caring responsibility, or they'd had kids and they wanted they did a graduate program for returners.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I think EY has done it. I think the consultancies are actually more ahead on these elements, the big consultancies, the global consultancies, perhaps more than some of the businesses, so I think there's that.
Yeah. And also, sorry, I keep interacting with you, but you're making really good points. Like, you talk about the big consultancies. I heard today that KPMG are looking to get nearly 30% of their workforce into their business by 2030 that are from a working class background. Because again, interestingly, they typically hire the similar sorts of people from either Redbrick universities or so on and so forth. But actually, they want to get that diversity coming through, and they've announced that I think just today or this week for sure. So again, backing up that key thing that the big consultancies are getting a handle on where they want to go and how they want to change.
But I think I think you can do consultancy. I was talking to someone, I was coaching someone today, and he was saying, is it a career crossroads? And he was saying to me, actually, if I was in my 20s, I would want to be going and doing all of those elements. But now he's just got married. He's sort of mid-30s. He wants to have his wife and want to have children. He's saying it doesn't suit me. So I think what's happening is that people are there's more choice than there was before the pandemic, and people are voting with their feet. So if the business isn't clear on its purpose, if they're actually not caring and empathetic, then people will go with their feet and they'll find an organization, a leader that does.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because we just had a question in actually coming from LinkedIn. It's not me, but it's another brilliant name because it's Lee. 100% agree. I work from Manchester, but my head office is in Brighton and also in Wellington in New Zealand. So again, that flexibility side of being able to cross-reference or fertilize, if you like, talent from elsewhere is obviously at the fore.
But I think that's absolutely right. But there's two downsides. One is that I think, and I've seen it with graduate programs, and you may have seen it as well, is that during the pandemic, a lot of graduate schemes were set up, but people started their scheme online. And some of that still, So I think that generation of talent has really struggled and is continuing to struggle because actually the social norms, the water cooler moments, the kind of, where do I ask for support? What's the Zoom etiquette? The amount of times you go on and we've done webinars for clients and all of the cameras are off.
Yeah.
It says more to me about culture and more about the way that people feel safe. To be themselves.
It's really interesting actually. We developed obviously Phoenix 51 is a business that I co-founded, and it is a digital assessment platform. We integrated video into that platform to enable us to carry on with not only physical assessment centers, but to be able to continue getting the best possible talent into organizations. And that's made the transition pretty well from virtual to physical, from physical to virtual actually. So now we've got a hybrid model where you can kind of do physical and virtual, which is fantastic. But there is no doubt that you do lose an element over a Teams or over a Zoom or something like that. You do lose that water cooler moment. It's very difficult to just have a conversation. And when you're somebody developing their career and you need that support, I think that's probably, to sum it up for me, I think that's probably what we're realizing that we now haven't, which is, them water cooler moments where that kind of just nip out and go and grab a sandwich with somebody and have that conversation. That doesn't exist in the virtual world. And although there's productivity positives, easy for me to say, productivity positives from people virtually and being at home and so on and so forth, there's also some negatives, which is that culture of your business starts to get lost. And how do you keep that? That's very, very tough to do if everybody's scattered around everywhere.
Well, I think that I think spontaneity has been lost. So before you would go round to someone and say hi, or you meet for a coffee and it just be organic. That organic nature of relationships has been lost. And now we're like booking appointments and we're scheduling ourselves from 8 a.m. till 6 o'clock at night.
Totally.
And when, we haven't got enough time to go to the toilet.
No, so it's crazy, isn't it? How does that work? Like, it's because we all do it. Like, honestly, I've been online on virtual online today since 8 a.m. So about 7:45, I've got on, and I've literally tried to schedule. And I think to myself, when I was in the office, I didn't do that. I wasn't. Yes, I was busy, but you had time to go to the loo and grab a sandwich or something, didn't you? It just doesn't feel like you have that time.
I think it's about being present So I think, and I don't mean presenteeism. I don't mean. So I think when we first started and people weren't used to working from home, they felt they had to log on and they had to work harder. So I read somewhere that said that the average day is now 45 minutes longer than it was pre-pandemic. Which I can absolutely, so you can see it, right?
Yeah.
So I think the presenteeism is dissipating with online, which is a really good thing, because people are trusting. That culture of trust, I think, is, we've been at this for 18 months now. If it's not, then you're in the wrong business, right?
Totally agree.
But I think it's really difficult to be present all the time. So you talk about being on calls from 8 o'clock. Well, thankfully, before this, I actually had 20 minutes to actually think about this call. But normally I might have gone from something else. It would probably take me 10, 15 minutes to get into the conversation, because I'd be still having.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
And I think that's really difficult because I think Zoom is set up for extroverts. I don't think it's set up for introverts or people perhaps that have a neurodiverse lens. And that's worries me from a talent perspective, that we're going to lose a huge amount of people that actually don't feel comfortable. That's why the cameras are off. And especially in that younger environment where you don't really know, or you come from a university and then you're just thrown into a big meeting and you've got to kind of impress or do something. How do you create those cues and clues? Because in effect, what this has created is a mask.
Yeah.
Without, not a physical mask, like, like we have to go out and wear a mask in a shop, but actually Zoom's created a mask to really understand people and give you an opportunity to be yourself, because in a way you're performing all the time, even though you don't realize you are, which you wouldn't be doing if you were in a meeting room, right?
Yeah, because it is that natural, like you say, that organic way of just interacting with people. Got a couple of questions here and a couple of statements directly for you. So for one for you, Joe, directly, for people working in their early careers, working from home, how can you develop the culture? So it's one thing that we just touched upon there. It's very difficult, isn't it, Joe? What sort of tips have you got around that?
So we work with a company called EU Networks, and we help them do their graduate scheme. And what we did was we did a balance at the beginning of when they joined of some hard skills. This is how to run, how to be present on Zoom, how to time management, influence. But the biggest bit of the culture was having people from the business come in, and those moments where once a month they'd have lunch, literally online with the CEO, or the CFO would turn up one time, or the CPO would turn up another time, and they get a chance to ask questions, but also get them to start to build that culture amongst themselves. So you set it up, but actually try and move that away from yourself. So I think coaching plays a big part in that.
Yeah.
But it's also also with EU Networks, they all had mentors. They had all senior mentors.
Interesting.
So their mentors played a massive part in a way in alleviating some of the things that they couldn't talk to their manager about. So I'm a bit worried about doing this spreadsheet, and I'm not very good on macros. Can you help me? So underpinning that sort of program that they went through, they enabled the business to start to, I suppose, embed with the people what the culture was just by talking, but then they had specific interventions that help, and I think that's really important.
No, that makes sense. We've done a couple of things actually at Phoenix 51, but also as well within some of the clients as well, which has been, I know it sounds a bit silly, but when the first lockdown happened and it was all a novelty for everybody across the planet, people were kind of going online and doing quizzes on Teams or quizzes on
Zoom parties,
Zoom parties and whatever. But actually, some of them things you wouldn't ordinarily do. Like, I think one of the benefits, if you like, and also hindrance, that's kind of depending which way your bread's buttered. But one of the benefits of being virtual is that actually you're always in my home. So today you're in my home, right? So actually I'm in my home environment, so I'm quite relaxed. But actually the downside of that is that you're also in my home. Whereas actually if I walked into you're the global talent director for all the businesses you worked for before, and we met in a boardroom in one of your offices in New York, for example, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Like it wouldn't be like this. It would be, I'm a business person, you're a business person, this is where we are. Whereas now you're in your home, I'm in my home, you can see the Tottenham stuff we've had a conversation about. And I know. But the point being is that it can be a bit relaxed. So I do feel that there has been some benefits on there as well.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think you're right. Look, I was saying to you before we came on, my dog is sleeping next to me.
Totally.
He'll snore throughout, and probably he's attacked me in webinars before. But I think people have become a little bit more conscious of allowing people. I think the good side, picking up on your point, is that I feel much more comfortable. I mean, if you knew me pre this, I was pretty relaxed anyway. If you'd met me in a boardroom, we'd probably still be having this conversation, because that's just me, right? I'm corporate. That's why I wasn't a very successful corporate person. That's why I kind of set my own business up and tried to do it my way in that sense. But I'm really hoping that some of that personality remains, because I actually think that we pivoted very much. I've got a disparate team, but we pivoted straight away to deliver everything online, and we'll continue to do that. And I'm definitely seeing that. But it enables us to be much more flexible and agile. We've been able to work up solutions for clients or get a new product to market so much quicker than, because we've just been, I think, more innovative. In lots of ways. And I think that's had an effect on us as a business, but also hopefully the effect on our clients.
Well, sometimes when a crisis happens, no matter what that crisis is, whether it's an internal crisis in business or whether it's a global pandemic or something that's quite poignant at the moment is 9/11. Obviously, it happened 20 years ago. You have to adapt rapidly to that situation and change. And a crisis out of a crisis, which is obviously very bad, can actually come some really good process and really good innovation, like you say. And I think, we've noticed that, we started a technology business in a global pandemic, and actually we had to, go, full 180 degrees, like turn an oil tanker really quickly to the opposite way. And we found that's kind of benefits in our business. So again, it is very exciting. Just want to pick up on a point that Emily makes here in the comments as well. She's agreeing about 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. back-to-back, hardly any loo breaks, that sort of stuff. Feels like there's an inbox warrior as well. And she makes a really good point, because actually sometimes when you're constantly, you're not actually doing the inbox stuff. And then you just feel like you're just doing a quick, I'll check the messages. And then it becomes not so detailed, or you're not given your inbox, if you like, the attention that it needs to do. So again, it's quite difficult, isn't it, to manage the time in that way sometimes?
I think it is, but I'm a firm believer in, I suppose, Simon Sinek said it really well in his book Start With Why. I think we need to go back, right, to why we do things. And I think the one thing that has really made me think about is purpose. Yeah. And with that talent lens, I think if you as a business can really focus on purpose, why people work for you, is beyond the normal T's and C's, right? It's beyond money. It's actually the simple things like saying thank you or getting stretched within a job. It's being managed really well. It's having different opportunities. It's the career development. It's, it's much more organic than that. I think we can go back to the why, then the what and the how will come. So if you think about why I set my business, it was to answer those questions: how getting great people and keeping great people. The way that you achieve that is, as you know, is a myriad of different solutions, which makes it really exciting. But you have to ask every single client, why now? Why do you need to recruit another 300 people? Or why do you want to assess that talent? Are you going to give them the opportunity? Otherwise, all you're doing is spending money, and you might as well, you're setting people up to fail. And I fundamentally don't want to be doing that, because I want to feel that every intervention that we do, however small, whether it's a piece of coaching or leadership assessment, you're setting that person up to develop their potential and
yeah.
to fulfill their possibility. That's the why, right?
No, I completely agree. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek as well. I've done a lot of work in and around his stuff and his philosophies. And I think one of the key ones for me is why I'm so I have such a strong belief around behaviors and cultures and values, because I totally believe that. I was talking to a client this week who said they've offered somebody and they got counter offered an extra $20,000.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Extra $20,000. That is crazy. So we're talking about just going for money. But actually, if we can talk and center around our why, our purpose, the values, the competence, the behaviors around our company, and then actually hire people that share them values and them behaviors, then it's not going to be around money. It's around the purpose. It's around the cause. So essentially what we'd be ended up doing with is people that want to work and stay working with our organization because our values match. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. And that's why I think that HR and marketing are completely intertwined. I think actually as an HR professional now, you actually have to be a marketeer.
Interesting.
Much more about brand.
Change. Would you say that's changed quite a lot then? Because traditionally you wouldn't have thought that, certainly 15, 20 years ago, I've been in the industry 20 years, you wouldn't have thought a HR professional 20 years ago would have had a kind of dovetail with marketing, would you?
No, I definitely think it's changed. I think social media, I think you look at Glassdoor, for example, where people can put anything about your company. I think it's like, you've seen it in hospitality, haven't you? You go to a restaurant and everyone kind of chimes in, and you only look at the bad. You don't tend to look at the good.
Why is that? It's so bizarre, isn't it?
I just find it. I'm just cruel. I just kind of like to know what I find it funny, So, and what's bad for one person is not so bad for you. Do you know what I mean? But it's become, you can get a kicking in a talent perspective, an organization, without actually doing anything particularly wrong.
Yeah.
And I think, so I look at some of the clients that we work in, and when I ran a recruitment function, we would give feedback even at first stage. So it might not be massive feedback, but you see graduates. I know I'm going back to the graduate, but I found when I was trying to go for senior level jobs, and you apply on LinkedIn or you apply through an agency, Corn Ferry, even you don't get the feedback. So how are people going to learn? How are people going to know that perhaps that cover letter, or even now you don't even have to do that. You just press a button on LinkedIn.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think you have to think holistically much more about what you're selling. You're selling the dream. And if every single part of that dream doesn't add up, you'll get found out. And someone will notice it, and it's much easier to comment than it ever has. So I think that's why I think social has been brilliant, because it's opened it up. It's less become who you know and much more democratized. But with that comes added responsibility and probably a bit of grief if you're a chief people officer.
Yeah, for sure. It's that EVP stuff, isn't it? Employee value proposition and making sure that we're protecting our brand. It's very interesting to talk about feedback. One of the key features that we built into our platform, just gives me an opportunity to plug, it is automated feedback at every stage of the recruitment and employee journey. So if you're using our technology to recruit people, first stage, second stage, final stage, or virtual assessment centers, at every stage of that journey, they're getting automated feedback on their strengths, their weaknesses, their insights, data that they can really take away and say, actually, I understand that these were the values or the competencies that you were looking for. This is where I stacked up or not, as the case may be. This is what I've got to improve on. And actually, and I'm really pleased, actually, Joe, that you mentioned not only just the grad side, but actually the senior market, because it doesn't matter how senior or junior you are, you still need to have feedback. I was only literally talking in my board meeting this morning about managing staff, and it doesn't matter how experienced member of staff you are, they still need to have a manager. They still need to have somebody to be able to either talk to bounce ideas off, a mentor or something.
For sure.
And I think that feedback is important. Do you?
I do. I mean, look, I think feedback's a gift. I think, you go back to Bill Gates talking about that the greatest gift that you can give in terms of learning is development and feedback. And I truly believe that. And throughout my career, I've had mentors. I've got a coach to help me because I've never run a business before in my life. I don't know what I'm doing half the time, but I know that my gut is really strong, and that I know my industry, and I think I'm doing the right thing. But having those mentors and coaches along the way, and I think, that's where yourself, and I know myself pretty well, but if you're at whatever stage, having a manager, having mentors, having sponsors is, otherwise you will definitely, back to why we're here today in terms of talent waste, they'll go and find it somewhere else, because there are businesses that will be better. And therefore it's not, I've always been a fan of being voyeuristic and finding out what the best are doing, and then adapting it and thinking, what does it mean for that organization? So every job I've ever done, it's always been new.
Yeah.
But I've always been able to take experiences and put them together and create that, that join up. And I think that natural curiosity needs to prevail, especially at the moment, because otherwise, if you're not curious as a chief people officer, recruitment, whatever, there are many people that are, and it's a massive trait in terms of potential that you'll be looking out of.
Losing talent off the back of that, because people are doing things slightly differently or more attractive to the talent pool that you're actually going after. You mentioned talent waste there, and again, thank you for that. Obviously, this is Talent Waste podcast. So, have you had any experiences that you can kind of draw on, or solutions that you put into place to kind of stop that talent waste piece, that kind of rinse and repeat cycle of bringing people into an organization and then them either getting poached or not working out or not being managed correctly? For all of your experiences, you must have had some interactions with such scenarios.
Well, look, the BBC and Channel 4, ITV. I mean, I didn't work at ITV, but the media industry is renowned for that. It's basically used to call it the revolving roundabout.
Oh, really?
I mean, if you were a bad exec at the BBC, excuse me, that's my phone. At the BBC, you then go off and be a bad exec at ITV, or
rinse and repeat.
Just literally revolved, and your name. We can. I'm not going to name anybody, but we all knew who they were, and they just literally, when they pissed enough people off at one business, they'd end up going to another one, and I hated that.
Okay, you're right. So we lost you for a second. So that revolving around, and again, it's very, very interesting. I've spent 20 years essentially in the recruitment industry, and the recruitment industry, to be fair, is no different to that. Hadn't been no different to that. In the actual industry itself, you'd football. We talked about football, off air in the green room. Very similar. Juan de Ramos can actually come and put Tottenham bottom of the league, for a few years ago, get fired, and then all of a sudden he's manager of Real Madrid, which is one of the powerhouses in football. So how does that work? Is it there's something innately in football players as well? Somebody doesn't fit within a business or within a football team, and then somebody else thinks that they can get better out of them. It must be a human trait, do you think?
I think it's the difference between whether you're interested in high performance, which a lot of sport will be, but high performance on the pitch and being able to motivate and energize and galvanize at that moment and really bring that team together in terms of high performance, or whether you're interested in potential, whether you're interested in growing your own within the business. So I always ask organizations, potential for what? Are you looking to build a pipeline of people that can be your subject matter experts, so your highly regarded specialists? Do you want the talented many? Everyone is talent, that kind of philosophy. Or are you trying to grow your future leaders? So I think the difference between performance and potential is what you're getting at here. And what a lot of organizations spend a lot of time and money, let's face it, in terms of L&D, and is skills development around performance. And actually what you want is enough people on the bench to come in and be able to do those jobs that are going to bring you X amount of millions or high value and increase the contribution. So therefore, I always think when you're looking at that, you should start with succession planning. I mean, that's the core. So you need to go back to basics and say, who are my successors? So if I see, we use the phrase at Let's Talk Talent called the gutted list. So who would you be gutted tomorrow if they left? And why would you be gutted? What are the attributes? What are the knowledge? What's the relationships? We use the STAR model, skills, training, attributes and relationships. And we say, okay, so then what are you doing? How are you building it? Are you building someone who's ready now? But I'm not talking about 9-box grids and all of that rubbish. I'm actually saying, if you just did it with your exec team and said, not ask about the role, who's the next CEO or who's the next CFO, who would you be gutted if they got poached by Google or they got poached by Dentsu or any of the businesses that we've worked with, right?
Yeah.
That's a different question. And it drives a different answer. So think about the question before you start, thinking about the process ultimately.
Really, really interesting. I can't remember, which is bad of me to bring it up, but I read a book that talked about leadership, decision making in leadership. This was a couple of years ago, and I for one am always trying to learn and develop in my own, my own brain and my own skill set and that type of stuff. As you mentioned earlier, I still think one day somebody's going to find me out. When you mentioned earlier,
massive imposter syndrome.
Totally that. But anyway, the point being is that there was a proven methodology around how to make a decision, and it was about how do you feel if the coin landed on what you didn't want it to be.
Nice.
So heads or tails scenario, right? So actually, heads I win, tails you lose. Flip it metaphorically, and actually it's a lose. How do you feel? And that gives you the scenario of how you make a decision. And I think that's quite interesting what you've just said there about kind of looking back, the gutted list. I've just put that in the notes. That's fantastic for the people listening and watching as well. It's like, who is your next superstar? But actually the gutted list is about how would you replace that person? Who would you be gutted that would leave? And I suppose the next step on that then, Joe, would you then be able to put succession planning in around that individual? So if you've identified, no, I don't want Joe to leave, would you then make some steps to say, right, what can we do to not only safeguard Joe staying, but when she does eventually leave, we've got somebody for her replacement?
Yeah, I mean, we're working with 2 Premier League football clubs, and they've done exactly that. They've kind of done a very similar version to the gutted list themselves, and they've identified 15 VPs, but they've done it very, very quick and dirty on an Excel spreadsheet ultimately. And what they brought us in to do was to do exec development, but using assessment. So we used Hogan, VoicePrint, through an open 360 where we talked to all of the 5 people in their network, and then created a development report. And that development report is then their next year's worth of development, whether that's a coach, whether that's going on a piece, going to Harvard, whatever it is, formal, informal.
But
it's discussed with the manager, it's discussed with the individual. So there's that side. And then another club that we worked with actually worked with Savile. So they took our model of potential, they then mapped it against Savile, and they've gone to the 65 exec -2 level, and we're just in the process of helping them talk through those Savile reports directly with their people. And they've basically created career stages, which I love, which is career stages, 5 career stages. I won't remember all of them, but the career stages is interesting because instead of talking about where you sit in a grid, talking about we think you've got potential to move to the next level is one of them, I think. One of them is to be a subject matter expert. Another one is move across the club. Another one is to be, 2 rows. And so it's a completely different type of talent conversation, right? Because it's not saying you're great at this, you're rubbish at that. It's actually saying, is that what you want? Because ultimately you could be saying to me, Joe, you could be the next CEO of my business, right? And I go, but I don't want that, Lee. I don't want. It's giving me a choice to have a conversation, and that's what I don't think we do, and that's why we lose talent, because we assume that everyone has the same ambition as a leader as us, and they don't. Right.
And I was going to say, and also to add to that, we also make the assumption that actually, as a business, we want Joe to be the next CEO, but we haven't taken into consideration what Joe wants.
Yeah.
And that's actually a fundamental flaw, isn't it? Because actually we've got our plan. So, okay, brilliant. You're going to come into my business. You're going to succeed me. That's fantastic. Then I've got Chris to do that and Megan to do this. But what happens if Megan don't want to do that? And what happens if Joe doesn't want to do that? And what happens if Chris feels actually I need to go sideways rather than go up? And all of a sudden that plans out. So I suppose at the very simplistic level, what we are talking about here, and there's some fantastic, potential versus performance, the gutted list, career stages, but actually its simplicity it's conversation, isn't it? It's communication.
Exactly. And I just think that the amount of money that businesses that we've worked with, and I'm sure businesses that have spent in effect, not having just a decent career conversation with an individual, I mean, you could probably earn millions. And I think we've got to train, not train, but I think we've got to develop that more intrinsically in our future leaders and our managers to have just a conversation, because we do it in our private life. We have a conversation with our spouses, our parents, our kids about what they want to do. But why do we then not do it in reality in work? Because there's more risk by having it with your manager to say, actually, when I did this, that's why I left Talk. I had a conversation. It's the first time I've ever done it in my career. I've come to the end of my journey. I've done everything I want to do. I don't want to operationalize it. Please, Nigel, will you let me go? Now, it was scary because I had nothing to go to. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do, but I knew I didn't want to stay there and just take the money. That wasn't what was driving my purpose.
It's really interesting. I can totally relate to that. It is a slightly different, scale of my career to where you were at the time. But I was a corporate FTSE 100 organization. I wasn't the director at the time. I was a manager, but I knew that with the director and the people that was in place, I couldn't go anywhere. I walked in that office. I was the man. Like, everybody loved me. I was doing a fantastic job, turning over 32 million quid. Brilliant.
Amazing.
But actually I wanted to go and do something different, and that was The Apprentice. So for me, The Apprentice come along, and I applied, and then I got in and beat 20,000 candidates and ended up winning, and that gave me a different career path and enabled me to kind of open up that purpose of why are we hiring on a resume and a CV? Why are we looking at pieces of paper and disregarding people? We should be hiring people based on attitude and behavior and their core values.
For sure.
And
For sure.
What I mean? And that's what gave me that purpose. So I totally agree with you 100%, Joe, that can be the case. But like you say, it's scary though if you haven't done it before.
Well, it's really scary. And I do a lot of career coaching, and the one book that I use a lot is by Helen Tupper and Sarah Ellis. It's called The Squiggly Career. So if any of your listeners want to get it, honestly, it talks about at the end. It's 5 chapters. I use it a hell of a lot in career sprints that we run and coaching. And what it says is there's 5 facets to managing your squiggly career, which you and I have had in terms of that eclectic mix, right? It's not been vertical, it's been squiggly. The number one is understanding your strengths. So what are we good at? And an assessment can really help in that. Let's be honest. Your strengths, your blind spots, those types of things, right? You've then got your drivers. So that comes back to values. So people have taken jobs because, I've known a friend who didn't take a job because she was a vegan at Doc Martin, because that driver was incredibly strong, but it was the perfect job on paper for her, but she turned it down. The third is confidence gremlins.
Brilliant example. Yeah.
Right. So we all got confidence gremlins. We all get, like the
imposter
mask.
syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. I beat myself up harder than anyone's going to beat me up. Right.
Yeah.
So confidence gremlins. The fourth is network, which you'll know and I know is incredibly important. And LinkedIn and all of those networks, things like this show, play a massive part, right, in connecting like-minded people. And Definitely. The fifth and the most important is about possibility. So what is your future possibility? And we don't ask people about possibilities. And they talk about 4 possibilities. The first is your basically the obvious possibility. So my obvious possibility when I was at Talk was to be my boss.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Didn't want to do it. Would have taken me a while, but I didn't want to do it. The pivot possibility was perhaps to go into marketing or comms or, brand, because I really love that sort of side, but in a corporate sort of thing.
Yeah.
The ambitious is the third. So that may have been to be my boss's boss.
Yeah. To continue right? to that career ladder, that type of thing. Yeah.
And the final is your dream possibility. And so your dream possibility may be to set up your own business. It may be to go and live in a different country. And what the book enables you to do, and why I think it's important in terms of this show, is that we start to ask people what their possibility is, and we help them as leaders create that roadmap. And that's where assessment can help. That's where career coaching can help. That's where development programs really help, because they give people choice, and possibility is all about making choices at the right time. And therefore, if we don't know that we have choice, because a lot of the time in corporates, you think you're stuck in a rut. Actually, we've got much more choice than we've ever had. The world has shrunk.
It makes absolute sense. I've just put that in the chat there as well. So hopefully our viewers, and obviously for the people that are downloading this on Spotify as well, it's called The Squiggly Career. That book is called The Squiggly Career. Look, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I could probably chat for you to another 2 hours, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you've got stuff to do. What would you say, just to kind of summarize really, Joe, in this fantastic episode, what would you say that challenges that you or your clients are facing right now, and some of your top tips essentially to get the best out of the war on talent? We know that we're losing people. We know that the retention is a problem. We know that attracting people is a problem. So I know to summarize all of that's quite difficult, but what would you say kind of your top tips?
So I think it's the time to go back to basics. I don't think this is about pushing. I think we should stop trying, like your example of someone paying $20,000. I think this has to stop. It's ridiculous, because we're setting people up to fail. They won't be able to do that job. They're not qualified to do it, and it's actually going to have a massive detrimental effect on people's mental health, I think. So I think we've got to go back to basics, and we've got to start with the purpose, and we've got to get better at defining the purpose. And we've got to join up the employee experience that talks to people's head as well as their heart. Because I think if you understand the purpose and you understand the why and the role that you can play in it, then I think you're halfway there in getting great people and keeping great people. I don't think it's any more complicated than that.
Brilliant summary, and absolutely fantastic, Joe, to have you. Where can our viewers and our listeners find you? Absolutely fascinating. You did some fantastic stuff with Let's Talk Business. Where can they find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they see your work?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. So by all means, connect with me on LinkedIn. Our company, Let's Talk Talent's on LinkedIn, but our website is letstalktalent.co.uk. And you can find out all the work that we've done. You can download some free tools that we've got. So we've got white papers on HR strategy, on career development. We run free webinars. So, we're really open to kind of connecting the community. So if that's useful, then just pop along to the website and download away.
Fantastic stuff. And actually, a quick bit of a cross promotion, I suppose, for me. I'm actually one of the keynote speakers at the London Live, IHR London Live 2021 on Tuesday, the 14th of September. So anybody that's watching or listening, please go to my bio and download a ticket. Joe, you're more than welcome to come along. It is free to come along. We'd love to see you there, meet in person. So again, you can find out all that information either from my bio or from Megan that will send out all them details as well. And, yeah, absolutely brilliant. And I can't wait to start meeting people again in person, Joe. It's quite crazy, to be honest.
It's like, oh my God, I didn't realize that you were so thin, or you
tall. Yeah, exactly. Them sorts of things are crazy.
It's like really scary. Really scary.
It is really scary. Joe, you've been absolutely fantastic. Absolutely loved spending the last what is now the last 50 minutes with each other. Let's stay in touch, and I look forward to catch up soon, maybe on Tuesday.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Lee. Take care.
Top stuff. Thanks ever so much.
Bye.
Bye for now.